Between Malaysia and Singapore, the Phillip Channel narrows to just 2.5 kilometers. Through that single corridor passes roughly 80% of China's imported oil, 11 million barrels every day. One naval blockade here, and Chinese factories begin going dark. Within weeks, the world's second-largest economy starts to collapse. This is not paranoia. This is a map. In 2003, one man inside Beijing's leadership named this threat for the first time. November 2003. Inside a closed Politburo session in Beijing, oil dependency was no longer a distant worry. It was the threat that kept China's leadership awake at night. Jintao, then General Secretary, spoke with a bluntness rarely seen in official circles. The facts were impossible to ignore. More than 3/4 of China's imported oil arrived by sea, funneled through a single strait barely 2.5 kilometers wide. The Strait of Malacca, just a sliver between Malaysia and Singapore, had become a strategic noose. If blocked, China's factories would grind to a halt, ports would stand empty, and the world's second-largest economy could unravel in less than 3 months. Within weeks, the phrase Malacca Dilemma surfaced in classified reports and academic journals. It described not just a geographic constraint, but a vulnerability woven into the country's future. The dilemma was simple, brutal, and mathematical. China's domestic oil fields could supply only a third of demand. The rest, over 7 million barrels a day, had to cross that narrow channel. There was no alternative route that could handle the volume or speed required. For Hu and the Politburo, this was not a theoretical exercise. U.S. naval power in the region was growing. War games circulated through the Central Military Commission, modeling scenarios where a single blockade could trigger cascading blackouts and social unrest. The Malacca Dilemma became a standing agenda item, shaping security doctrine and economic planning. From this moment, China's search for escape routes was no longer optional. It was a matter of survival. At its narrowest, the Strait of Malacca contracts to just 2.5 kilometers. This is not a diplomatic problem. It is a physical constraint set by the Phillips Channel, deep enough for Malacca Max tankers, but no more. Over 120 vessels squeeze through this corridor every year, carrying 1/4 of the world's trade and nearly 80% of China's imported oil. The seafloor here drops to only 25 meters. Anything larger risks grounding. To the north and south, sandbanks and shipwrecks litter the approach, funneling all deep draft traffic into a single surveilled passage. There is no alternate corridor at scale. The Lombok Strait, further east, adds over 1,000 kilometers to any voyage, an extra day and a half at sea, plus passage through Indonesian waters under foreign watch. The Sunda Strait is even shallower, barring fully loaded supertankers. The Torres Strait, north of Australia, is a detour of more than 5,000 kilometers, with reefs and draft limits that make it a non-starter for bulk oil shipments. From the map, the logic is brutal. The U.S. 7th Fleet can project power from Yokosuka, Guam, Singapore, and the Philippines, tracing an arc that covers not just Malacca, but every plausible detour. Carrier strike groups can reach the strait in under 48 hours. These are not theoretical lines, they are operational realities. For China's planners, the geography is a trap. No matter how much the rhetoric insists on strategic autonomy, the map does not care. This is not paranoia. This is a map. The map suggested a way out. From the Bay of Bengal, a pipeline runs 2,400 kilometers across Myanmar's mountains and into China's Yunnan province, ending in Kunming. On paper, the numbers looked promising. A direct line bypassing the Malacca Strait entirely, with a capacity of 22 million tons per year, about 440,000 barrels of oil per day. For a brief moment, Planners in Beijing saw the Kyaukpyu to Kunming corridor as a lifeline, a physical answer to the Malacca Dilemma. Tankers would dock at Kyaukpyu, transfer their cargo to the pipeline, and send it east, beyond the reach of any naval blockade. But the pipeline's promise was always fragile. In February 2021, Myanmar's military seized power and toppled the civilian government. The country slid into chaos. Insurgencies erupted along the pipeline's route, with repeated attacks and sabotage. Throughput fell to half its capacity. Pipeline operators, once anonymous, became targets. Security convoys, armed guards, and emergency repairs became routine. Each disruption sent a message back to Beijing. Geography can be bypassed, but politics cannot. The corridor never covered more than a sliver of China's demand. The map offered hope. Reality offered only a temporary reprieve. The Malacca Dilemma remained. In 2015, headlines announced a $62 billion lifeline, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, known as CPEC. The plan was bold. Oil would land at Gwadar, a deepwater port on Pakistan's Arabian Sea coast, then travel by road, rail, and pipeline over the Karakoram Mountains into Xinjiang. Maps painted a new artery bypassing Malacca. On paper, a direct shot from the Persian Gulf to China's industrial heartland. Gwadar's berths gleamed in promotional videos, promising to turn a sleepy fishing town into a commercial gateway. But the numbers never matched the ambition. Years after ribbon cuttings, Gwadar's port traffic hovers at less than 10% of its stated capacity. No dedicated oil pipeline links the port to China. Instead, container throughput is a trickle, not a torrent. Security has become the defining reality. Since 2018, attacks by the Baloch Liberation Army have killed dozens of Chinese engineers and workers. Convoys move under armed escort. Insurance premiums for ships and cargoes have soared. The IMF's 2025 report lists Pakistan's CPEC debt at $30 billion. Each setback reinforces the pattern. Geography offers escape routes, but the map's logic is relentless. Gwadar's promise remains mostly theoretical, another false summit in the search for security. On the southern coast of Sri Lanka, Hambantota sits almost empty, its deep water berths stretching into the Indian Ocean, cranes idle, warehouses locked. In 2017, China secured a 99-year lease on this port, trading debt for control in a deal that raised alarms from Delhi to Washington. On paper, Hambantota is a gleaming node in China's maritime network, a foothold for the People's Liberation Army Navy, and a logistical outpost beyond the reach of Malacca's chokehold. But the strategic math is less forgiving. To move a single barrel of oil from Hambantota to the factories of eastern China, a tanker must still round Singapore, cross the South China Sea, and dock at a Chinese port, 10 hours sail from the strait's bottleneck. The port's location, hundreds of kilometers off the main oil routes, turns it into a detour, not a shortcut. The reality is stark. Each of these so-called pearls, Gwadar, Kyaukpyu, Hambantota, sits isolated, separated by vast stretches of ocean and vulnerable coastlines. They offer the appearance of reach, but not the substance of energy security. Naval flags can be planted, but oil cannot be made to flow uphill against the map's logic. The illusion of escape is powerful, but the bottleneck remains. China's oil arithmetic is unforgiving. Each day, the country burns through about 11 million barrels of crude. Of that, domestic fields supply just 4 million barrels, less than 40%. The remaining 7 million barrels, sometimes more, must be imported. Nearly 80% of those imports, over 8 million barrels every day, are forced through the 2.5-kilometer pinch of the Malacca Strait. The much-touted Myanmar pipeline after years of construction and political risk, can move only 440,000 barrels per day at full capacity. In practice, insurgency and sabotage have cut that to less than 300,000. The so-called escape routes, Gwadar, Hambantota, and overland corridors combined, have not added even a fraction of what the strait carries in a single afternoon. The gap is not theoretical. Each bypass is a sliver. The deficit remains 7 to 8 million barrels a day exposed to a single maritime bottleneck. No amount of infrastructure, no diplomatic white paper has managed to close it. The numbers do not lie. The trap is still set. Strategic planners in Beijing keep a single number on their desks: 80 to 100 days. That is the upper limit of China's strategic petroleum reserve. It is enough to cover imports for less than a season if the Malacca Strait is blocked. The reserve sits at 511 million barrels, scattered across coastal tanks from Jushan to Dalian. At full drawdown, it can supply the country for 3 months on paper. In practice, distribution bottlenecks, refinery mismatches, and inland transport delays cut that margin even further. US and allied war games estimate the first signs of economic shock would appear within weeks. Factory production lines would slow as diesel and feedstock supplies thin out. Power plants, already running close to capacity, would start rationing. By week 4, major cities could face rolling blackouts and rationed gasoline. The calculus is unforgiving. Every day the strait stays closed, the clock ticks down. No pipeline, port, or diplomatic back channel can refill the tanks fast enough. The bottleneck is not just a point on the map, it is a countdown, and the numbers do not lie. A strait just 2.78 kilometers wide stands between China and economic paralysis. Every contingency plan remains shadowed by one geographic constant. This is not paranoia. This is a map. As global tensions sharpen, the bottleneck endures. In the end, the world's second largest economy is still hostage to a line of water.